Okay, if people want to go to your website, it's cspoa.org. Let's go right into the lawsuit that you're talking about
Okay.
against the Clinton administration. What was going on at the time, and why did you decide to sue?
Well, that's the $10,000 question I wish all the media would address. First of all, it was pursuant to the Brady Bill. And the Brady Bill was a gun control scheme promoted by Sarah Brady and the Gun Control Incorporated that she worked with, relative to the injuries her husband received during the assassination attempt on Ronald Reagan back in March of 1981. President Reagan had been president about 2.5 months, and they tried to kill him. So James Brady was shot in the head, and he was confined to a wheelchair after that. He was still very intelligent, and when we went to the Supreme Court, he was there, and I spoke with him. I made it a point to shake his hand and tell him how much I admired him. And he said he admired me for what I did. And it was very congenial, and he was very gracious, and I absolutely loved him. And of course, he passed away about, I don't know, 10 years ago or so. But he was a good man. But he was exploited by his wife, and I did not care for her, and I still don't. But the issue was this. The Brady Bill was the first time in history where the federal government, the White House and Congress, passed this statute requiring the sheriffs to enforce federal statutes and federal mandates for them for free, with no money attached, no grants, just saying this. And I wouldn't have done it if they paid me. I don't care. I'm not a political prostitute for Washington, D.C. I wouldn't have done it no matter what. But I'm just explaining the whole situation. There was no money. There was no negotiation. But there was a threat of arrest if we failed to comply. Yes, they threatened to fine us $10,000 or put us in jail for a year, or both. And in this little book that I have put together about the case, it's very small, fits right in your shirt pocket, fits in your purse. It's only 16 pages. But in this book, it talks about the threat of arrest on page 4. I'm going to read it to you.
Okay.
So it calls us the Cleos. And that's key to all of this, because I have maintained that the sheriff is the chief law enforcement officer in his county. No one supersedes the authority of the sheriff, primarily because of history, and 2, because he's the only elected law enforcement officer in the country. He answers directly to the power source, we the people. So the threat of arrest goes this. Under a separate provision of the GCA, that's the Gun Control Act of 1968. So we know this is gun control. Any person who knowingly violates the section of the GCA amended by the Brady Bill shall be fined under this title, imprisoned for no more than 1 year, or both. Well, I was knowingly not going to comply because it said in the Brady Bill, the Cleos. And who did they give this to? The sheriffs. So we know that they know that the sheriffs are the Cleos, the chief law enforcement officer. But the threat of arrest and the attempt to commandeer sheriffs nationwide for federal bidding was way overboard, huge overreach. And so I came home from that meeting with the BATF when they told us what we had to do, and I cleared it through my wife that we were going to sue the federal government.
Okay, real fast. Forgive me if I didn't hear it specifically, but what were they telling you had to do? Like, can you give me an example of what you were required to do as a sheriff that you said, hey, this is unconstitutional, I'm not going to enforce this? Like, give me an example of something you wouldn't enforce.
Well, the first thing was unconstitutional was that they were trying to commandeer sheriffs. They have no authority to do that at all. The jurisdictional boundaries are very clear on that. They cannot commandeer me. I work for Graham County. I work for the people. The federal government cannot fire me. They cannot hire me. They cannot tell me what to do. They want to work with me? Come and sit down. We'll talk about it. But you're not going to be my boss. But it required us to do background checks on every single person in our county wanting to buy a gun. And We had to pay for all of that. We had to do all the bookkeeping, and they required us to check mental history records. That was against the law for law enforcement. We do not have access at that time. We may now, but at that time, accessing mental history records were not available to law enforcement, and it would have been a violation of law. So we do all this, keep all the paperwork, and then the people have to wait 5 days to get their gun. And it gave me the power. It gave every sheriff the power to say who could have a gun and who couldn't. And I could just say, no. Oh, you didn't vote for me. Oh, you had a bumper sticker for my opponent. I'm not giving you a gun. And there's no recourse. And so all of it was just trash. But the thing of it is, we learned because Howard Metzenbaum, senator from New York, introduced Brady Bill 2 just 2 weeks after I filed a number 1. It never made it out of committee because they said, look, number 1 is in litigation and you want to pass number 2? No. So they held off, and we found out there were 5 Brady bills scheduled to be passed 1 year after the other for 5 years until the Second Amendment was completely destroyed. First of all, gun control is against the law in America. I took an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution. I had to keep my oath. I had to keep my word. And there's no way I was going to go along with this. And so sheriffs, 6 other sheriffs joined me in this lawsuit, and 7 sheriffs saved the Second Amendment from this Brady Bill gun control movement. And I'm proud to say I started all of that, and I answered the call. And the Supreme Court case is the most powerful 10th Amendment decision in the history of America. And every American should have this book. It's available at our website, cspoa.org. And while you're there, become a member of the CSPOA posse.
Christmas, every kind of holiday that you could possibly want to celebrate that goes with wine is coming up. So go join AllisonWinePromo.com. It's my wine club where you can get 6 bottles every 3 months. And you know what? We're talking about extremism today. These are extremist wines, okay? You want to be an extremist, you're not ready to go get written up by ASU and the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism, then just go join my wine club, because some of these wines come from between 6,000 and 9,000 feet. Do you know how hard the grapes have to work for your palate? Between 6,000 and 9,000 feet. And these are very limited edition wines. They come from small family farms, vineyards that have been in business for over 200 years, places like remote areas of Argentina, France, Chile, Spain, and it's a great way to support the show. If you're not a wine drinker, get it as a gift. You could get the wine club yourself, get all the perks of it, hear about all the bottles, and then give them as a gift. You show up for your Christmas party, you've got an awesome bottle of wine, and you can tell them it supports free speech and getting to hear the other sides of the stories that we're not hearing in mainstream media. You can send me mail, P.O. Box 3355, Denellen, Florida, 34432. Love getting cards of encouragement. You can send tips, donations for the show, artwork, all kinds of stuff, just nothing edible. I know people like to bake cookies for Christmas.
No, send me the cookies. I'll take the cookies. Go ahead. But
we
want all of that.
You trust people more than I do. I just never know if you're going to lace it with arsenic or something. So there's that. And then also nothing creepy. My kids open the mail on the way home. They love to do that. So thank you to everybody who does that. Okay. Can you explain too, for us who may not understand legalese, what exactly the Supreme Court decided was key to your argument for it? And I asked that too, specifically, like I'm pulling up a Rolling Stone article right now, constitutional sheriffs inside the far right movement that's above the law. So this is what a lot of these groups say, that they think you guys think you're above the law. But what you're telling me is that actually the law decided in your favor that your argument is correct. So you're on par with the law. If I listen to you, if I read the Rolling Stone, you guys are just a bunch of, miscreants thinking that you want total anarchy. So please explain the SCOTUS decision and how it came to be and what was so important, I guess, to your argument that they picked up on.
Allison, thank you. You're really asking great questions. Okay, so first of all, any of you can read the case. Look up the case. Look up Mack v. US. You'll see the other sheriff that went with me to the Supreme Court. That'll come up too. Prince, Printz, the sheriff from Montana, and I ended up at the Supreme Court together. The case was consolidated at the Ninth Circuit when we both were there, because we're both in the Ninth Circuit. So the Brady Bill decision, written by Justice Scalia, was a 5-4 split. We won. The 4 Democrats sided with Clinton. The 5 Republicans sided with me. I really have disdain for the political nature of that. We're all supposed to be supporting the Constitution, whether we like it or not. Those who believe the Second Amendment does not protect a God-given right to keep and bear arms, you're wrong. It does. But politicians and their agenda try to destroy that and brainwash everybody that it didn't mean shall not be infringed. It didn't mean that at all. If you study what the Founding Fathers said, you know that it did mean that. So this decision, and I'm going to give you 3 quotes from this decision. Scalia introduces it saying he's going to give us a history lesson. He's not trying to protect political dogma or political agendas, which most of them do today. He's just trying to tell the truth, and he's taken us through this history lesson. The first thing he quotes is the decision of New York v. U.S. In 1992, New York won a case against the federal government because the feds were trying to force New York to take, hold, and store nuclear waste. And New York said, we don't want that crap here, and you can't force us to take it. You're not our boss. And they won. New York won. This is what they said in New York. Again, Scalia quoting from a previous decision. I will quote it, and I have it memorized. We have held, however, this is quote, we have held, however, that state legislatures are not subject to federal direction, end quote. So I want to ask all those experts who are always leftist experts, of course, do you believe that we should protect people's civil rights today? Do you believe that we should stand for what Martin Luther King fought and died for in a peaceful manner? And we say the same thing. We quote Martin Luther King. And so should we, if government is being abusive to citizens like the IRS, or that they come to go door to door confiscating guns, should we stop that? Should we have stopped Rosa Parks from being arrested back in December 1st of 1955? Yes, stop the abuse. If the government is trying to arrest you for peaceably assembling, should we stop that? If they're trying to arrest you for freedom of speech that they don't agree with, yes, we should stop that. We should stand in the way. It's interposition. We put ourselves in the way of the tyrant who's trying to destroy your God-given civil rights.
You know, something I just thought of that I found really interesting during COVID, we lived at the time in Eastern Washington, and we technically lived in Spokane County, but we live very close to Stevens County. And the politics are very different in Spokane County versus Stevens County, Eastern Washington.
Yes.
And if we went to dinner in Stevens County, we never saw anybody wearing a mask. And the first time we went out, because we were new parents, so we weren't really going out very often, but one time we went out and we happened to ask, like, wow, it's so different here compared to Spokane County. What's the deal? And the owner of the restaurant said, our sheriff said he's not forcing us to follow the federal mandates. And
that's right.
He's not going to enforce the mandates. So it was just really interesting to see that. Like, wasn't even enforcing. I don't know what you think about this, because I think there were state rules at the time too.
Right.
That the
not
legislature
laws.
had passed.
None of them were laws. And even if they were, we should have stood. We still should have
orders or mandates.
We had to stand against it no matter what. And there's over 550 sheriffs that did that nationwide.
Okay, so that was the biggest difference. I mean, and you saw, because people are like, well, if our sheriff isn't going to arrest us for not wearing a mask or social distancing. Or
how about being fired from your job if you didn't get vaccinated?
Well,
absolutely absurd. And all those people are getting their jobs back and winning in court.
thank you for helping me transition into telling people about my lawsuit. I am suing Washington State. Actually, Sheriff Mack probably doesn't even know this. I was working for the Department of Natural Resources in Washington State, interviewing people like Sheriff Mack during the COVID pandemic. And my bosses told me that I had to stop doing that if I wanted to keep my job with the government and the state of Washington. I refused to do that because I said I had a First Amendment right to continue within my personal time with my personal gear. They fired me anyway. So a nonprofit in Washington has taken my case. We just filed a federal lawsuit about a month ago. If you'd like to support the travel that I'll have on the way back and forth, help me with babysitting money, time I'm going to have to take away from the podcast to focus on the lawsuit, you can go to givesendgo.com/Allison. Free speech fight. Thank you so much to everybody who's been so generous and has already given. Really, really do appreciate that. So yeah, a lot of us have stories.
Wonderful.
Even the people you don't expect.
Yeah. So Allison, let me ask you the question then. This is all we're about, is defending you and anybody else like you from government forcing you to get vaxxed, arresting you for not wearing a mask, arresting pastors for having church, arresting pastors in the United States of America. We defended that. And we told every sheriff, and these experts are saying, oh, no, the sheriffs think they're above the law. They're going to destroy democracy. They're going to destroy our country. While our country's being destroyed and our constitution's being destroyed, they're going after the people that wanted to protect liberty. Wow.
Yeah, it really is interesting because I think both sides feel very concerned about the state of the United States, and yet we see it very, very differently. I mean, I see a lot of journalists' personal posts because I'm still friends with a lot of people who are still in the business. I see their personal posts on social media, and they're very, very concerned about the direction the United States is going. But it's for the total opposite reasons that I'm concerned, So we just see things totally differently. All right. If you join Allison,
wait. Real quickly, I wanted to finish those other two quotes from the decision. It'll be fast.
Yeah, please. Okay, go back.
Okay.
Yep.
So right now we know that the states are not subject to federal direction. State legislatures, states, same thing. That came out of the decision. Now get this one. He quotes the Federalist Papers. Can you believe this? He's quoting the founders in the Federalist Papers. Quoting, hence, a double security arises to the rights of the people. Well, how does that happen? Quoting again. The different governments will control each other. Now, do you know why the experts don't want to quote my decision? Because it completely contradicts everything they're lying about. And that's why they won't do it. Next one, last quote. This is so powerful. The Constitution protects us. Okay. But the Constitution protects us from our own best intentions. It divides power among sovereigns and among branches of government precisely so that we may resist the temptation, which is exactly what government did, resist the temptation to concentrate power in one location as an expedient solution to the crisis of the day. The crisis of the day was an expedient solution by Congress and all these other politicians to destroy our personal freedom and our personal choices regarding our own medical care. And folks, this is just a small sample of the power of this case. And folks, this costs $2. What do I make? 25 cents per copy? Okay, there's no markup in this. You can get 3 for $5. Get as many as you possibly can and pass them around to other people. I bet this would help you in your case too. I bet you $500 this would help you.
Yeah, well, I'm passing it off to my attorneys, and somebody in the chat reminded me to say who my attorneys are. It is the Silent Majority Foundation, the Silent Majority Foundation. You can go to silentmajorityfoundation.org and hear about them, learn about them. And you can even donate to the case and their legal fees over there. I did pull up the 10th Amendment just so we could just read it real fast because I don't know if we've read it yet. But the 10th Amendment, the power
it's in here. It's quoted in here.
Okay, good. The powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution nor prohibited by it to the states are reserved to the states respectively or to the people.